So I was going to go on with our text today, but then I found out that today's the 1-year anniversary of the shooting in Aurora. So I have to say something. Yeah. And then a few people have responded to my comments about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. And somebody broached the question of, well, isn't it somebody's karma also to be killed in this kind of way? You know, so didn't Trayvon create the karma? And then by extension, didn't the people in Aurora create the karma? And so on. So yes, it's true, you know, when we have a short life, when there is a very strong karma that ripens in the middle of your lifespan that interrupts your life, it's from some previously created negative deed. Okay. However, that doesn't mean that we just sit idly by and let negative karma ripen. If we did, then there would be no reason to have doctors, because we would just say, well, if you get sick, it's your karma, and just, you know, let them die, it's their karma. Yeah, so I don't think that's that's actually a clear misunderstanding of the idea of karma. Because while our suffering does depend on our previous negative actions, in this very moment, we also have the opportunity to act with compassion and thus purify our negative karma, and also stop the ripening of our own and other people's negative karma. So the thing is that negative karma may have been created in the past, but whether it ripens now depends on a lot of causes and conditions. It's not like destined or fated or anything like that. So, for example, last week 2 friends of ours came and visited, and her mother works in the surgery department in a hospital nearby, and the anesthesiologist there committed suicide just the previous day. So they shut down the whole surgery unit because everybody was in shock over it. And but the thing is, you know, this person, the anesthesiologist, was having a very difficult divorce, and so clearly he was upset. He was not thinking correctly. He was not in his correct mind. Because a gun was nearby, or he could go out and purchase one very easily, then it was very easy for him to act out that crazy thought. If we had stricter gun laws, and you know, he didn't have access to a weapon, chances are he would still be alive, because he would have, you know, when you have that crazy thought, it doesn't stay in your mind forever. It goes away after a period of time, and you regain your senses, you know, and so chances are he would have regained his senses. He would still be alive. And I think of, you know, his wife and his children, who now have to live with their husband and father having committed suicide. You know, so that kind of thing, what he did wasn't just his own life, it affects other people's lives. But the point that I'm getting at is that, you know, there may be the negative karma that's the principal seed, you know, that produces a suffering, or let's say a death, or a, you know, by some kind of disaster or violence in some way. But for that karma to ripen, you need all the cooperative conditions. And in the case of this anesthesiologist, the cooperative condition was the easy availability of a weapon to do so. Okay? So, you know, we could say, yes, Trayvon, you know, had that negative karma, but there were a lot of other cooperative conditions that made that happen. You know, so for example, if Zimmerman had followed the instructions of the people on 911 who said, don't follow him, let the police come and handle it, then the outcome would have been different, okay? So we always have to look at things in terms of principal causes, but also a constellation of conditions. And then also to see that, especially with gun violence, we see that it affects not just the people who die, but so many people who are alive. And during our young adult week, one of the participants, a young man, said that he was around the corner from the school, from Columbine, when the shooting occurred. And then he was actually also in the theater in Aurora when the mass murder occurred. And at that point, he just put his head in his hands and he couldn't speak, And it really hit me at that time how deeply our actions affect others in ways that we don't know. And so especially in terms of gun violence, how it affects not only the people who are killed, but also other people around who then have to live with things for the rest of their lives. And so that's why, of course, I always encourage compassion as a medicine to that kind of grief, because in my mind, it's the only thing that works. I mean, yes, you see it as samsara, and this is the nature of samsara, so what do you expect? But that alone can leave you feel pretty rotten, But when you can have compassion, not only from towards the victims, but also towards the perpetrators, then you can heal. And in any situation like this, we usually think the victim is the person who died and the perpetrator is the one who killed. But actually, both of them are victims. Because when you kill somebody, you live with that for the rest of your days. Yeah, so you're a victim of your own action and you suffer under that, So Zimmerman may have been acquitted, but I don't know the state of his mind. Yeah, and how he's going to feel about that. I do know, feel about that action. I do know that one of the men I write to, who's in prison for murder, and the murder took place when he was 19, and he's now 50-something. No, I think he's 60-something now. So he's been in prison a really long time, and that was his first arrest too, first crime. Anyway, he said, that image of the person he shot falling over just remains very vivid in his mind. It's not something that you easily forget. Yeah. So another point I'm trying to make is when we don't have the cooperative conditions to act out our negative impulse handy, then that negative impulse can sometimes fade away. We come to our senses again, and then that suffering that we would cause to ourselves or cause to somebody else doesn't get created. Yeah. So I think we have to think carefully about this of, not only what situations do we put ourselves in, but as a society, what kind of cooperative conditions do we make readily available to people who, in a particular moment of time, are not thinking clearly. And we all know that we've all had times when we haven't been thinking clearly. Yeah? So we know what that's like, and it's nice to know that there's some buffer space around so that sometimes these painful and harmful intentions don't get acted out. Okay. And so similarly, why do we live the way we live here at the Abbey? It's because we're trying to also create the cooperative conditions that make it easy to create virtue. Okay, so we have a daily schedule that includes meditation and teachings and chanting and Dharma contemplation and stopping and, you know, deliberately cultivating our motivation and all of that. And so that is a way that we've set up our environment to encourage positive ways of thinking, okay, and positive actions. Yeah, so we can all see, you know, what kind of environments we set up around us and we create and we participate in, and you know, try and set up good environments for ourselves and others.